Hello artists, welcome to your cat with skull painting class. In front of you, you should have your canvas with the cat and skull, a cup of water, a large brush, a small brush, a paper towel. For your paints, you should have your mustardy yellow, your green, your coral, which is kind of like that peachy pink color, and then your black and white. There's also a wax paper on there too for mixing later on. I put a paper plate underneath mine just so it's easier to kind of hold and for you to see, but all you need is your wax paper to mix on. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to wash our two brushes, so go ahead and dip your brushes into your cup of water, stir them nice and round, and then pat them nicely onto your paper towel and get them nice and dry. For our first step on our painting, we are going to paint the top part and the bottom part with white. We'll also kind of carry that over to the sides of our canvas just to kind of clean up our canvas a little bit and to brighten it up. So if you wanted to grab your large brush and dip it into your white, be sure it's not dripping. You can always kind of wipe it off on the sides. But I'll kind of just start down here on the bottom and work my way down from this line. Get it nice and clean. It's okay if you go over the line a little bit. We'll kind of cover it up with black later on. But for now, I'm just kind of staying underneath that line, keeping my big brush kind of moving in an up and down motion, making sure my paint is nice and dry. You can always go back for more, make sure there's not too much on there. Just kind of continue that up and down motion. You can always kind of curve with the tail and then go underneath it. Same over here, you can curve with the tail and go underneath it and get everything nice and smooth. Work my way down from the line again. And underneath here, you can just kind of do your best to move up and down, get everything nice and smooth. Gonna continue on. All this bottom part nice and white. There is a little bit of space to the right over here above the line. Kind of go into that curvy area so you can bring some of your white up there too. So over here in the corner, and it's kind of building its way up. And again, we'll paint the sides of our canvas white as well, but we're going to kind of concentrate on the front part of our canvas first. You can go back to more white paint, just kind of pat it off. Get everything nice and clean. Work our way up. Excuse me. You can even outline around this line right here and then work your way up again. And just be sure your paint is nice and smooth. You do not want any bumps on there. It'll take forever to dry. And you want a nice smooth texture to your background. And you'll see a nice difference between the canvas white and your white paint, so it does kind of clean it up a little bit. can always go back and touch it up if you need to. If there's any spots that you missed, you can tell where the paint is still kind of shiny and wet, and you can kind of go into those spots and make sure it's all nice and clean. And then whenever you're ready, you can start painting the bottom of your canvas. Again, just kind of working in that up and down motion. The side, the up and down motion. So get all those nice and clean. And if you wanted to go back and give it a second coat, just to make it a little bit brighter, you can. But this is just kind of like a way to clean up those sides a little bit better. Perfect. And take your time. But once you are done, you don't have to clean your brush. We are going to go in there in our skull area and paint that all white. And we'll use our small brush to outline and our bigger brush to kind of fill in that skull white. Go back and make sure everything is nice and clean. And don't forget, you can always pause this video if you're still kind of working on this step. So you have a nice white background, and again, you can go back and give it a second coat if you want it to be a little bit more solid, where you don't see as much kind of streakiness, or if you want it to be brighter, that second coat of white will be a little bit brighter. The next step, whenever you're ready for it, you can put your big brush aside, and I'm going to go into my small brush and my white paint. You can even pat some off so you don't have too much on there. And I'm going to go in pretty much on top of my pencil line. Kind of this rainbow shaped curve on the top of the skull's head. So you can have that pencil line right there being covered with your white paint. Then I'm going to go over to the right and kind of cover that pencil line. I'll go to the right of this line right here. So I'm not going over it, I'm going to the right of that one. I'm going to the left of it as well. So I've gone in on top of this curvy area right here, that rainbow shape. On over to the right. And then I went to the right of this line and to the left of this line. And then I'm going to go inside this space. Just kind of go to the left and to the right of each one of those lines. And then I'll go inside over here and inside over here. So I've only gone on top of the pencil line up here and to the right. Otherwise, I've just kind of played it, the line on the inside of the skull shape. I'll also go around this kind of nose area of the skull. And I'll go on the outside, like so. And once you're done, you can use your bigger brush to paint the skull white. Again, you want to kind of stay inside of that shape. Make sure your paint is nice and flat. If you accidentally paint over a pencil line, not a problem. And remember, the only area that I kind of covered with my white was here on the outside. And then to the right. I'll show you a little bit why later on. So I have my background and my skull painted white. If you want your skull to be a little bit brighter, you can give it a second coat of white. I'm going between these kind of teethy areas. Get it nice and smooth. Kind of move my brush up and down more, but kind of playing with those curves as well. Perfect. There is one more area that I do want to for you to use your white paint with, and it's just with your small brush. You can wipe some off if you get too much on there. You just want a little bit of white paint, and kind of like this donut shape on the outside right here of that smaller circle. Use my small brush and my white paint to get that all covered in. And once you're done, you can go ahead and wash both of your brushes. Get them nice and clean. But again, take your time if you're still working with those 1, 2, 3 areas of white. You want to go back and touch it up, not a problem. You want to make sure everything's nice and neat. Once you are done, you are going to paint this kind of background area. There's a little bit of space right here too, with that really pretty coral color. Give your white a minute or two to dry before you jump into this, because you don't want your wet white paint and your wet coral paint to mix in together. And we are going to use our small brush to kind of outline those areas, and our bigger brush to fill it in a little bit more. So small brush. And I'll start over here to the left. Be careful not to rub your hands into any wet paint either. And I'm going to actually overlap over my pencil line as well. Such a pretty coral color. Just going to outline this shape right here. Bring the coral in a little bit closer. And make that curve that's on the top. I'll also kind of bring this in a little bit on the left side and a little bit on the right side. There is some spaces kind of peeking through here underneath this leafy area. It's almost like a triangle shape, and you can go ahead and fill that in. And underneath this area, kind of like the jaw area, I'm going to outline. You can fill it in. I'm going to continue to use my small brush and the coral paint to outline the outside of these two leafy shapes, so it's kind of to the left of them. You'll see that curve kind of going in. And then I'll go around these kind of leafy shapes too with my small brush and my coral shape. So to the left of each one, and I can work my way up the stem. And this just kind of lets me know where to stop with my coral paint. So I'm just kind of going around those leafy shapes and to the left. On this one up here, you don't want to go past this line, so make sure that you come to like a nice point right there. And I'll do the same thing to the right side, where I'm gonna just kind of go to the right of these leafy shapes and the stem. Again, this will just kind of let me know where to stop with my coral, just to keep my lines nice and clean. So this part's kind of tricky right here. There is a little space over here the left of that kind of eye socket area, that's gonna be outlined underneath that leafy shape. Let's go ahead and paint inside of that shape as well. And if you can go ahead and get over that leafy shape, but not right here. That's gonna be green and black later on. Once you're done, you can go on top of kind of like the rainbow head area. And this part, the coral kind of really gets smudgy with the pencil, so that's why I wanted to kind of white it out. And we just kind of continued it on to the right too, so it doesn't get too smudgy later on with the black. So that rainbow shape, but I'm gonna stop at that point right there where the cat and the skull meet. I'm gonna go to the left of the shoulder area, the left of the face, and above the ears, and the head. I'm gonna go to the right of the body and stop at that point where kind of the leaf and the cat meet. And I'll go on top of this line right here and to the right of it. Kind of follow the curvy shape. Like so. Once you're done, you can put that smaller brush aside. You can jump into your larger brush and that coral paint, and you're just staying inside pretty much those puzzle pieces of 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you need to use your smaller brush in smaller areas, again, you can. Let's start over here to the left, and I'm just painting that background. And again, you can use your smaller brush for smaller areas. I get into those little spaces a little bit better. Moving my brush up and down again, getting it nice and clean. Continue on to this section above the head, kind of over to the right. Make sure everything looks nice and smooth. Did get some on the white. If you do get some on the white, it's okay. You can always let that dry and then go back over it with the white to kind of white it out. So if you make a mistake, let it dry, then put white on top of it to white it out. Outline that head a little bit better. And it gets me that extra right there. I always have some on my paper towel because I'm scared I'm gonna pick up too much paint. So I always kind of end up wiping some off and then going back to it so I can use it again. Again, go in there and kind of smooth it out. I'll go back in there and kind of white it out, and this is going to be a black line later, so I'll probably just cover that up. So cute. Once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your two brushes. If you are going back to your white to touch it up, be sure that coral is nice and clean, and be sure your brushes are really clean too. You can always just kind of wrap them with your paper towel and get those nice and clean. For the nose of the cat, it's going to be super easy. All I'm going to do is take my nice clean small brush, get a little bit of white, wash it, and dry it. Get a little bit of coral. This is all my wax paper. Just make a nice light peachy kind of color and fill in the inside. A triangular shape. So it's just a little bit of white, a little bit of this coral color, mix it with my small brush, and fill in that nice triangular shape. Take your time and give your coral a couple minutes to dry. But the next thing we're going to do is we are going to paint these 1, 2, 3 leafy areas with our mustardy yellow. So you have 1, 2, 3 areas with mustardy yellow. Again, be sure that your coral is nice and dry, and you're going to go over your pencil line, kind of cover it up, and then fill it in. So you have 1, 2, and this is all done with my small brush. Oh, sorry, and I can use my big brush too to fill in. Sorry about that. So you can use my small or my big brush whenever I'm filling in, but definitely your small brush to outline the left of the skull. And I would definitely do 2 coats, maybe even 3 coats of this mustardy yellow. Be sure you don't have too much on there. It's kind of painting, again, in an up and down motion. Went over my pencil lines, smooth out my paint, make sure it's not bumpy. And then this one over here to the right. So you have 3 of them. Again, be careful of your wet coral paint. You don't want the yellow and the coral to be blending in together. Those 3. I think I'm gonna let them dry for a little bit and then go back and do another coat. Once they're a little bit more dry. Once you're done, you are gonna wash and dry your small brush. Go into that green with your small brush. Again, be sure there's not too much on there. And you're gonna go over the stem. Be careful of your yellow paint. You don't want the yellow and the green to be mixing, so maybe give your yellow a couple minutes to dry before you go in there with your green. And then I'm going to continue to use my small brush and my green paint to kind of outline and fill in all of these leafy shapes. And be careful, you want to make sure that coral again is nice and dry so those two don't blend. And just follow the shape of the pencil. One more down here. And again, you can use your small brush and your green paint to fill in. You can definitely do 2 coats of this green too to get it a little bit more solid, or if you like that kind of like a watercolor light look with your green, you can just leave 1 coat. For your other leaf, you're going to use your small brush and your green paint again, and you're just going to follow this kind of the wiggly shape. Come down here. So I've done my first green area over here, and then I'm going to do my other one over here. And I'm going to just kind of do my best to go underneath the kind of the veiny areas of each one, because I am going to paint those white a little bit later on. Looks like this is all kind of green. So go around those kind of veiny pencil-y areas so you can fill them in later on with white paint. I'm just using my small brush. I would definitely do 2 coats of this as well. Let that dry for a bit before I add any white to it. Once you're done with the green, wash and dry your small brush. And you're gonna paint inside of like the eye socket and the socket for the nose area with your small brush. Your small brush and your black paint. Just be sure to kind of dab some off. You don't have too much on there. I'll start with a circular shape. Just kind of outlining it. And it looks like a crescent moon shape. I'm gonna fill it in for that one. And I can fill in this shape too. So outline and then fill in those 2 areas. Same with the nose. I'm gonna outline and fill in that area. I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the rest of the skull while everything is kind of drying over here. Be sure you have just a little bit on there. And you can always bring your brush to a point by kind of dipping it into water, twisting it, and then just a little bit of black paint. We're gonna do some line work, so if you wanna get it wet, tap it off on your paper towel about 5 or 6 times, and then just kind of twist it to bring it to a point, and just a little bit of black. And also remember, when you're doing your line work, the harder you push, the thicker the line becomes. So be sure you're just on the tippy toes of your small brush when you're making these thin lines. And I like to make nice long lines, just kind of keep my brush going until it's out of paint. And you can always get it a little bit more wet if it seems to be drying out. Pat onto your paper towel because you don't want your brush to spread too much when it's wet. Go over it. And then I'll go over these kind of teethy areas. So pretty much where I see the pencil lines. And I'll also go over here to the left. I'll go above. Where are these? Curves start. And then to the right. And I'll also go here to the right. follow that shape of the skull. Also, you do have your black cat, so we'll be outlining and filling in those areas too. Super easy. We'll start with the eye. Be careful of any wet paint. Outline and fill in. Outline and fill in the two eye areas. And then I can start outlining the left of the face, the right of the face. I want to make sure there's no white peeking through between the black and the coral, so I'm going to go over it and outline it a little bit more. Start with the head area. Go to the left of the body. Go to the right of the body. Again, making sure there's no space between the black line and the coral. Be careful if your plant life is still wet. And then I'll go underneath because I know this is all going to be black. This line is. And I'll go to the left of the tail and the right of the tail. Going on top of the pencil line as well. Cover it up. You can use your small brush and your black paint to go around the triangular shaped nose. So I'm gonna get it wet, tap, 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 4 or 5 times, bring it to a nice point. Gonna go around this nose area. And I'll also go on top of this pencil line as well. Sorry. Looks kind of owl-like right now, but it'll come together. Maybe make that nose a little bit smaller. There you go. And then I can use my bigger brush to fill in the cat, with my big brush and my black paint. Be very careful of the skull. You don't want to paint any. Blacken those areas. If you need to jump to your smaller brush to kind of get into those smaller areas, you can. Curve. You can use your small brush again if you need to for those smaller areas, because you want to make sure you stay in that shape. And again, if you accidentally get out of the shape, you can clean it up by putting white on top of it once it's dry, and then just putting whatever color you need on top of it. So you can always use white as a whiteout. Complete the tail. drag that brush, get those outside areas nice and clean. Make sure all that paint is nice and flat. So cute. Remember too, this line underneath it was all black too, so if you wanted to bring it back to a point, you could, if it's already nice and pointy. And remember, you want to barely push on it. You want a nice thin line. Kind of continue on underneath that skull. So here's the left side. Here's that right side. I'm gonna go back and give my plants another coat, but I wanna make sure my brushes are super clean. If you have access to nice clean water, you can grab a new cup of water. Even just kind of wrap your brushes around with your paper towel, make sure all sides are nice and clean. This brush aside. I'm gonna jump into my yellow mustardy yellow again. Give it another coat. Be very careful of that wet black line. You don't want to get anywhere close to it. And anything else that seems shiny and wet. So this area with the cat still seems shiny and wet, so I'm going to be super, super careful. Jump into my small brush and go back to my green paint. Give it another coat too over here. Again, if you like just that one coat with this green, you can keep it one coat. It's gonna look more like watercolor. But if you want it to be a little bit more solid, go back and give it a nice second coat. Same on this side. Be careful of any wet black paint. There you go. In a moment, we'll be adding some white on top of our plants as well. That'll get rid of some of the pencil lines that you kind of see peeking through. I'm gonna clean up this white right here, make sure everything around it's nice and dry. All right. Once you're done with your mustardy yellow and your green, you are gonna go in there with your nice, clean, small brush and your white paint. So I'll bring this over. Maybe tap some off so you don't have too much on there. Make sure your green is pretty dry. It's okay if it's a little bit wet, but you gotta make sure it's really gonna take that white paint over your pencil line. You're just kind of creating a white vein on top. You're barely pushing down on your brush and you're just kind of following the shape of the pencil line or the vein of the flower, or excuse me, of the leaf. If you got some green on there, you can always wash and dry your brush, because you can also add some white on your mustardy colored leaves to kind of get rid of the pencil marks. So once you're done going over your green leaf, if you wanted to wash and dry your brush, making sure there's no green on there, you can just do small little wisps of white here and there. It's kind of following the shape. It's kind of short little sweeps. And kind of going over my pencil line. Do another one right here, just to kind of white out the pencil lines. You can go inside and kind of follow the shape of your leaf inside of it too, but just small little sweeps. If you wanted to, you could even go over this one a little bit too with some white. So again, I'm just kind of following the outside shape a little bit and then going in there, and these sweeps are small little fast movements. I don't see any pencil line really showing through, so I think just for the sake of design, I'm just going to go in there and just add some fast little sweeps of white, kind of following the shape of my leaves. And again, it's very random, fast little sweeps, kind of following the shape of each one. You don't have to do it on all of them. If you wanted to as well, this is optional. You can use the back of your small brush, dip it into the white paint, and you can create some dots on the outer edge. And I'm leaving a good amount of space between each one. So I'm using the back of my small brush, pretty much using it like a stamp. Just kind of going on that kind of outer area. It adds a little bit more design to it. It really goes with the style of the painting too. And the harder you push on the back of your small brush, the bigger the dots become. So you can always go back and push a little bit harder if you need to. If one got too big, you can always kind of try to wipe it off as soon as you can, and then build the coral color on top. And then once that's dry, you can make your dot again. All the way. Be careful of that wet black line if it's still wet. Ooh, I accidentally dipped it in the coral. No. So cute. I love it. You can always go back and touch things up, get things a little bit more clean, give things another coat. Just remember, if you have a wet color, another wet color, they are going to blend, so sometimes you just have to let things dry before you go back and touch them up. But otherwise, there is your cat with skull painting. Super cool style, super fun. Thank you so much, artists, and have a beautiful day.